go into the types. Let's start there because I think that'll really help people really understand what we're getting at.
Yeah, sure. So before we do that, if you don't mind, I'd like to just kind of add to what you were saying, Chris, which is you are right on the money. I have found even myself have been subjected to these types of things that you're talking about, and it really all comes down to what might be hot in the market for the day. And so, it might be a low-carb diet. It might be a keto diet, which is a high healthy fat diet. For a while, we had the zone diet, which was focused on high proteins. And so the assumption always was, even by myself at that time, that if it works for your neighbor, if it works for your brother, if it works for your wife, your kids, it should work for you.
Yeah.
And I found myself literally 7 years into owning a company in downtown Chicago, moving and shaking the movers and shakers of Chicago, literally Fortune 500 people, the local celebrities that lived in the area, people that were paying me and my company, like, at that time, crazy amount of money.
Yeah.
I pretty much was putting them all on whatever the hot diet was at the time. And it just took me years and years and years for it to finally sink in that the one-size-fits-all nutrition plan is really kind of flawed, Yeah. And the way I learned that was, honestly, I was only getting like super killer results with about a third of my clients.
How interesting.
Yeah. And so for a person like myself that really, really is competitive with myself, I'm always kind of trying to push to the next level so I can really, really help these people. I was finding it was just not really fulfilling. It was so confusing. How on earth could John get these amazing results on this program when Shelley was just kind of getting okay results and quite honestly...
And a bit frustrated too. Yeah.
And frustrated. And quite honestly, Beth was getting like no results, And I'm thinking, well, it must be that Beth's not following the routine, right? I mean, that's... At that time, I was much younger and had a lot to learn, in the industry. And I myself was kind of listening to these vampire myths, which, by the way, we talked a little bit about this earlier. A vampire myth to me is basically these myths or untruths that become so common. Like no one should ever eat a carbohydrate, for example, that everyone believes it to be total truth. But I find that these types of untruths can suck the blood right out of your system, and they never seem to die.
Yeah.
Like a perfect example of this is everybody still believes you should eat, or you should only drink 8-ounce glasses of water a day.
Right.
But you and I know that if I'm a male that's 5'9", 155 pounds, and you're a guy that's 6 foot, 240 pounds, it absolutely makes no sense whatsoever that you and I should be consuming the same amount of water, right?
Absolutely right.
A great way to explain this is every time we ingest food, no matter which type you are, we basically have a biochemical response, and that is our pancreas secretes a certain amount of insulin.
Right.
What we find is that if you're an F type, your body is subject to really increase or dramatically have a high amount of insulin secreted after we eat, unless you put a slow food into your body, meaning a high protein, high purine protein, high fatty food.
And a great example of this is what I told you I ate this morning and how good I feel when I have like 3 eggs and 3 strips of bacon. That satiates me. I feel good. I don't feel high. I don't feel low. And I don't feel hungry for like a good 3-4 hours, which is pretty much what you're hoping to get out of a meal.
Right.
And where I was going wrong was those years ago, just like you talked about, even though I was in the fitness and health industry and I had clients and working with people, trying to navigate them to their optimal, health, I myself was doing that thing. Got to eat every few hours, got to keep the metabolism going. And what happened? I was more irritable and more high and low and crashing and burning because I was eating like small quantities of food, not the right balance, right? Probably not enough protein and fat, too many carbohydrates, and I was tearing through that stuff or whatever it was doing to me, and I was instantly hungry. And I was just like feeling twitchy and anxiety and just felt that low blood sugar feeling, which no one likes, right? That feeling like you feel yourself crashing. And then I'd have to go gorge myself on like, high protein and fat foods in order to feel, regulated. And it took years for me to realize, like, I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I just knew something wasn't right.
And Chris, you are a perfect example of an F-type fat-burning fingerprint. You definitely need higher purine proteins, higher purine fats, and you need to stay away from fast carbohydrates.
Yeah.
For sure. Versus my ex-wife, for example, she was a true S-type through and through. Meaning, for me, I'm actually an M-type. I have a nice mixture. So I have the eggs, I have maybe one strip of bacon, but I throw in a little broccoli, I throw in a little cauliflower, I throw in some carbohydrates there, and that really satiates me and makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
It's a great energy release. Whereas my ex-wife, for example, who is a lovely person, we're still great friends, by the way.
That's great.
Yeah, she... If you loaded her up with bacon in the morning, she was dead to the world for the day. I mean, just completely lethargic. She absolutely needed a plate full of nice vegetables. She needed a nice low glycemic piece of fruit and maybe one egg.
Wow, interesting.
So very, very different plates. Our plates looked very, very different at the time. But for her, that was all she needed.
Yeah.
Lower levels of high purine proteins and fats. And they are beautiful athletes, much like these cars we're talking about.
Like your Michael Phelps, right? I mean,
exactly.
Who's not going to say, "Wow, that guy's, fit."
Yeah, and I can guarantee you, Michael Phelps is not walking around on a keto diet when he's performing.
No, he was known for eating 5,000 to 10,000 calories of pasta and stuff.
Yeah,
right.
But again, a unicorn, not what we want for the normal person.
Yeah. Don't run out to buy out, the grocery store on pasta.
Yeah, but why we're talking about Olympic athletes, but then you look at very similar body types. If you were to look at them, we look at a Usain Bolt, who's the fastest man alive.
That's right.
Now this is a guy that has to stoke his engine. As an F-type with higher levels of purine, or higher levels of protein and fats, healthy fats, And so these are great examples of three body types that would fall into the category of these car types.
Yeah.
And so I think that even for myself, we're all creatures of habit, right? Mm-hmm. And we tend to, let's face it, we like to find things that have the least level of resistance, right?
Right.
So if we're hearing these vampire myths forever, right? Stay away from carbs, stay away from fats, 8-ounce servings of water.
Yes.
Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Well, we start to inherently believe it. And before you know it, it's no longer serving us for the greater good. And when a belief system no longer serves us for a greater good, that belief system becomes nothing more than BS.
Yeah.
Because if it's not serving you, it's totally BS.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And we just believe what's out there. I mean, most people, they say, well, I saw it in print, or I heard it on the news, or I heard it on the radio, so it must be true. I saw it on the internet, it must be true.
I saw it on the internet.
It must be true. And so we just take it for what it is and say, this diet is, everyone's getting great results on this diet. But really what we're seeing is the people that fit that type the best are the ones that are getting the great results, and those are the transformations that you're seeing. You're not seeing the other 2/3 of the people that maybe gave that diet a go but didn't have so much success with it.
Chris, you're 1,000% correct with that. And I think that, even I was guilty of just assuming, well, the other people just aren't doing it. They're saying they are, but they're not. And the reality was I was just flat out wrong.
Yep.
And, it took me a long time to really realize that. And then the next, talking about the myth, the vampire myth of breakfast being the most important meal of the day. I held on to that and fused it with this eating 6 small meals a day for probably a decade.
Yep.
After I was first introduced to the fact that it probably wasn't the best for us. And so the fat burning fingerprint really is a hybrid fusion of discovering what your unique fat burning fingerprint type is and what I call utilizing an intellectual eating window, which is really intermittent fasting.
You gotta like give it a fair shake and do your own work to figure out, like, is this full of crap or is this something that has like real roots? And sure enough, we're still talking about it. So so obviously it gets results.
The roots are real.
The roots are real. And so you started kind of going more in that direction, and you implemented that a little bit into your. So not only did you and at the time were you starting to figure out what your type was while you're kind of getting into IF? Is that kind of what was happening?
So that's exactly what was happening. It was kind of slowly but surely I was recognizing patterns within both. For example, if you're slow oxidative, these people tend to be the people that do very, very well on only 1 to 2 meals a day. Their glycemic load, the amount of food that they can have in one sitting, is not nearly as impacted, for example, as an F type. So these folks, because they have a slow oxidative system, I think of them as a sailboat almost. The food comes in, the fuel comes in, and they say, oh, okay, so you gave me 800 of my 1,600 calories today. I got this, no problem. I've got a system that can break this down very steadily, very slowly, and give you a slow, sustained amount of energy for the next 6 hours, right? Yeah. These are the slow oxidative people. They're the sailboat. They've got that nice little bit of wind hitting the sail. They put it back on cruise, and they just sail right across the bay, right?
Yeah, right.
Whereas what I discovered with F types, these are the cigarette boats out there. They're like, wah, 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 wah. You know, they're going across the water, and they annoy me after 10 minutes. You know, sure. I'm always like, whoa, look at that boat. Look how fast it is. But within 10 minutes of hearing
That's absolutely right.
I'm done with it, right?
Yes.
Put me on the sailboat. But where I'm going with this is these people tend to be very glycemic load sensitive, meaning these folks actually should have 2 to 3, maybe 4 meals a day, but that depends. You know, if you're a real high performance athlete, maybe 4, definitely not 5 and 6 for sure. But these people, 2 to 3 meals a day, kind of smaller plates. For example, you and I were even talking about that earlier today. I mean, Chris is a phenomenon, you guys. You should see him. I mean, I'm your basic Conor McGregor. I'm 5'9", 155 pounds on my biggest day.
Let's not get
crazy. But you know,
crazy.
Chris carries a lot of muscle mass, and we always want what we don't have, right? But for example, for Chris was saying where he feels the only time he ever gets in trouble is if he loads up the meal more than he should on any given sitting. And this is a perfect example of what we discovered with F-type people.